So while us Nintendo Switch fans wait around and see if Nintendo has any kind of direct showcase planned for the summertime season, there is actually a number of different Nintendo Switch games that are slated for release this month in June. And in today's video, I want to walk through the entire list together and share my personal recommendations on which new Nintendo Switch games that are releasing this month may be worth adding into your Nintendo Switch collection right now. What's up, nation? Make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification if you haven't already. And as mentioned, guys, today we are looking at the list of new Nintendo Switch games that will be out in the month of June 2023. We don't know of a lot as far as first-party Nintendo games at this point in time, other than Pikmin 4, which is slated for a mid-July release, but there are a couple notable Nintendo Switch games that I have on my radar for the month of June, and there's also a number of smaller indie type games that you may enjoy if you've already finished your Tears of the Kingdom run through and you're looking for something else to play. Now, first up on our list is Killer Frequency. We won't walk through each one of these games, but Killer Frequency is one that for survival horror fans out there, you may like. It is one that you have a first-person perspective and you are trying to solve puzzles while, of course, trying to avoid death. And while I myself am not the biggest fan of these type of more story-driven, narrative type of games, it is one that I thought would be worth mentioning in today's video. Next up is We Love Katamari Reroll plus Royal Reverie. This is a very colorful, artsy, use your imagination type of game. Apparently it's a sequel, one that I'm not very familiar with, but it's described as action, puzzle, and arcade focused from Bandai Namco Entertainment. And that is also out June 1st. You then have Project Nightmare's Case 36. This looks like a straight up crazy horror game, one that I probably wouldn't enjoy that much myself, but if you're super into like hardcore, gruesome horror type games, it might be up your alley and worth looking into. All of these games, of course, are out on June 1st so far, so we're starting out the list with games that you can already play right now today. Now, there's a few other games on screen that you can do your own research on. None of them really stuck out to me in a big way. We also have Super Mega Baseball 4 from EA Sports, and while I'll say I'm not typically a big sports games fan, I do tend to like the more arcadey, over-the-top, fun type of games and editions of these, as opposed to the ultra-realistic MLB The Show type games, and this definitely has those more silly arcade vibes. It takes me back to the NFL Blitz days on the N64, having ridiculous fun with friends, and while this doesn't look quite that over the top, it still seems interesting enough for arcade-style baseball fans out there, and it is also already available with the release date of June 2nd. We then have Loop 8, Summer of the Gods. It's described as an action RPG, but everything that I can see in the trailer seems to be a very slow progression, more story-driven type of experience, and one that really didn't do a lot for me in terms of its presentation. But maybe fans of the franchise, as I do believe that there are multiple installments here. It's called Loop 8. I don't necessarily know that it's the 8th game in the franchise, but maybe if you're familiar with this, it might be one that catches your eye. It does seem to have some turn-based RPG elements, but again, kind of seems like a slow build from what they're showing in the trailer, and definitely more heavily leans into that very story-driven, detailed character description side of things, which, I don't know, the gameplay always has to be there for me at the end of the day before anything else. You then have Raiden 3x Makado. It looks like R-Type to me, so that's good enough to mention on the list. It will be out on June 6th, and I am a fan of these throwback arcade style, shoot as much stuff as possible on screen in your jet type of experiences, and it does look like one of the gimmicks it has is a pilot two ships at once, so you're actually controlling multiple different ships on screen at the same time. And as you'd expect with these type of games, it looks extremely chaotic at certain sections of the trailer, and I'm sure it takes a lot of mastering to get through some of the later, more difficult levels. Now, next up, out on June 7th, we have Nocturnal, which I am a very big fan of the art style and the presentation of this game just based off of the trailer. It, of course, has that classic Metroidvania style vibe to it. It does seem to be a little bit more story focused, with the character numerous times searching for his friend or whoever is lost, but it has interesting enough enemies, level progression, and also what looks to be a nice and responsive combat and platforming system. So one that may may be worth looking into, especially for big Metroidvania style gameplay fans out there. And again, it is out June 7th. Also out June 7th is Senses Midnight, one that we won't spend any time on. In fact, we'll go down this list just a little bit and you can kind of see some of the different games that are on screen, none of which really stuck out to me in a big way in terms of doing some basic research for the video. We will want to get to a little bit more at the bottom of the list because there are a few notable games that I'm really going to be paying attention to, and you know, most of which you probably already know. Cuphead is available with the DLC right now on the Switch. There is a limited edition release, which is why it is on this releases.com website that we're going through with all the Nintendo Switch releases. So just remember that if you maybe want to pick up this game physically and add it into your collection, there is a limited edition release of Cuphead happening on June 20th this month. Now you then have The Last Hero of Nostalgia and The Rise of Evil, which what from I can tell is just the DLC that I think is launching the same day as the game, if I'm not mistaken. It is out June 20th, and just from judging from the trailer from this looks to be a more indie level Dark Souls type of experience. At least that's definitely the vibes that I got when watching the combat gameplay. You even see a particular backstab happen, and you can definitely tell that this game has taken a big page out of Dark Souls. Interestingly enough, though, there is a lot of Minecraft influence as well whenever it comes to some of the visual styles as in the characters, because it legitimately looks like you're either killing Minecraft characters or they're fighting you at one point in the trailer. So it's out on PS5 and Switch. It's one that looks honestly not bad. I mean, I'm definitely a fan of the Dark Souls style gameplay. I really am a sucker for that across the board. And if you are a fan of Souls-like type of games, I would definitely look into this one. It looks like one of the better Nintendo Switch releases for the month of June. And again, it is out June 20th. We then have Robo next up on our list, which just looks like a lot of fun at first glance. It's a side-scrolling, fast action platformer, but you're a very tiny robot that looks like you're just shooting lasers as fast as possible and trying to avoid all the chaos that is, of course, trying to take you down in the form of other robot enemies. Little bit of like Super Meat Boy vibes meets Mega Man. I don't know, that's kind of like the first impressions that I have when looking at the gameplay trailer, but it looks fun enough. It looks like one of those fun indie games that may be worth adding into your Switch collection. Now, we then we're going to skip a couple of the games here because I do want to spend just a little bit of time on Sonic Origins Plus, because you may remember that, of course, this game was originally released as just Sonic Origins in June of last year. So we are now a full year later and we are getting the Plus version. The biggest difference with this is that it is actually getting a physical release this time around, in addition to some DLC and extra modes, playable characters, and all of that. And I was a huge fan of this collection when it did originally release. I played through all of the Sonic games in the story mode, which does have those nice animated cutscenes kind of tying the events of each game together. And I think it's a really fun way to progress through the entire classic Sonic collection, as I've been a lifelong fan, especially of the 2D Sonic games out there and even certain 3D ones along the way. But I do think that this is one that a lot of gamers will want to pick up physically. I know I've been waiting for the physical release and it's finally here this month. And fortunately, it does seem that Sega has patched out and addressed most of the issues that players have complained about since the game's original launch last year. And it's a shame it took them as long as it did to get all of that ironed out. I didn't have any major bugs or glitches on my initial playthroughs, but I definitely saw enough complaints online to know they were a real thing. And that game is finally out in its complete collection, Sonic Origins Plus, physically released on all platforms as well as digital, and it will be out June 23rd. So big one for Sonic fans out there. If you skipped it the first time around, it might be worth picking up now. Now, next up, you have Story of Seasons. We won't really spend any time on a few of these games here. The next one I want to hop into towards the end of the month on June 29th is AEW Fight Forever. I grew up a huge fan of wrestling games. We're talking the classic WrestleMania 2000 on the N64. No Mercy seemed to be the fan favorite, but for whatever reason, I spent most of my time in WrestleMania 2000. Countless hours of fun with friends. And then, of course, I continued to collect the different WWE games as time went on. Day of Reckoning, a really enjoyable one on the GameCube that I played through. And this seems to take heavy inspiration from those type of classic games. It definitely is the more arcadey, over-the-top style wrestling game as opposed to a super realistic simulation type of wrestling game. And that's what I'm most excited for with this. I haven't at this point in time seen the direct Nintendo Switch footage of the game yet. I'm assuming it will not look quite as fancy as what you get on the other consoles, but because of its focus on more of the arcade type action and presentation, I actually think it's going to look and run great on the Switch. Hopefully that is the case at least, and from everything they've shown so far, I'm essentially sold. This is one that I will definitely be adding into my collection day one. There's some wild arcade type modes where you have to run around and collect chips in the rings. I don't know that I'll be so into that, but in terms of the moveset, the roster, how everything has been presented for the game so far, this one will definitely scratch that nostalgia itch for me for those classic style wrestling games from the look of it, and I'm glad that this is being brought to market as well. The WWE 2K games seem to be stepping up in quality in recent years. They're still not quite exactly what I want from that classic wrestling game experience, and I'm very hopeful that AEW Fight Forever will deliver that classic arcade wrestling quality experience when it launches later this month on June 29th. Next up, you have Noob the Factionless, which looks to be a fun enough fantasy RPG style game. Decent graphics, not much else to say on it. And then we have a number of different titles we will skip through. The only one that I will kind of make the last shout out for before we wrap up the video today is Demons Ate My Neighbors, because this is one that I didn't know was even slated for release at all until this video and doing some of the research for it. And of course, I grew up as a big fan of Zombies Ate My Neighbors back on the SNES, and it definitely has that same style. It literally looks like a direct sequel to that game, but with more modern visuals, of course. However, I don't know if it's the same team actually making a sequel to Zombies Ate My Neighbors, or if this is some very inspired by type of project that definitely looks exactly like it. But everything from the retro 90s style presentation in the trailer all the way through to the gameplay, this is a love letter to Zombies Ate My Neighbors, but with a little bit more of a modern look and feel to it, and this one has piqued my interest. So this one looks good to me. Co-op gameplay is intact and all of that. Definitely one that you'd prefer to sit down locally with a friend, or at least with online play with a friend, and go through together. And if you have nostalgia for Zombies Ate My Neighbors, I do think that this is going to be a no-brainer to look into and potentially pick up. It says it's out in June. It does not have an exact date at the time of filming this video, so I'm assuming it might be one of those smaller shadow drop type, here's the game, just announced with the release date randomly this month, and it's probably the day it gets announced, or maybe a week or two in advance. But anyway, that'll be out, and that's going to wrap up our list of the June Nintendo Switch new game releases. Not the biggest month out there for sure, especially considering that we're coming hot off the heels of Tears of the Kingdom. We are not at a point where Pikmin is out, so no first party Nintendo support, and we really don't know that we'll get any of that for the rest of this year at this point until Nintendo communicates something around their first party lineup. But there are definitely some notable third party and more indie focused games, and Sonic Origins Plus collection will be one that I definitely will double dip on and pick up physically, and AEW Fight Forever, another big one that I'm looking forward to adding into my collection this month, in addition to Demons Ate My Neighbors. So a game that I didn't even know about until this video, but I want to hear from you guys at this point in the video, whether or not you're planning on picking up any new Nintendo Switch games in the month of June. What are your big games you're looking forward to now that we're in this post Tears of the Kingdom world? And do you think we will get a summer Nintendo Direct presentation where we potentially get some kind of more mainline first party Nintendo Switch games announced? So regardless of your thoughts and feelings on everything we talked about today, I do look forward to hearing from you all in the comments down below before we leave the video, as I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around this topic. Go watch yesterday's video next if you haven't already, which is on screen right now. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.